everyone for joining. We've got the pleasure of Ian Clark, who's going to be presenting today's session. Ian has been a CFO for 25 years. He worked with large corporates earlier in his career and more recently has been supporting smaller SMEs as CFO. He's worked in companies that are going through growth phases. He's worked in companies that are exiting and also turnarounds and across sectors. So he's got a lot of experience. And earlier in his career, he was fortunate to be involved in the implementation of a strategic roadmap. And he's going to share that process with us today that he's since implemented in a lot of organizations. Well, I think you said four organizations. So we thought the best way to sort of structure it would be for Ian to sort of run through the process, which is probably going to be about 20 minutes. And then if anyone's got questions throughout, if you can just pop them in the chat. And then at the end, we're just going to open up for discussion, questions, and hopefully people sharing their own insights. So with that, I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to pass over to Ian. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Christine. Thank you to everyone who's joined to listen to me waffle on a little bit about strategy. I'm not going to really talk much about myself. What I wanted to do is start by just explaining how did this process sort of come into my life or my career. About 15 years ago, possibly slightly longer, I was coming out of a 10-year stint of a big PLC. And I knew I was going to go back into SMEs. And it wasn't long after joining an SME that wanted to go through a growth journey that the CEO was a member of Vistage, the CEO's mentoring group. And the CEO asked me to go along to one of the Vistage presentations that was done by an American guy who'd helped Jim Collins work on Good to Great. And I'd recently read Good to Great, which was a bit of a game changer for me. And then we spent a day being shown through exactly this execution roadmap, and the clues in the title. It really does help companies execute on their strategic framework. So Good to Great, the book, and this process sort of came into my life as I'd not long joined this SME, and it was a bit of a game changer for me. I'll be honest with you, I just love it. As Christine said, in the 4 businesses since, I've implemented it as well and introduced it to CEOs, chairmen, boards, etc. So, and it's cross-sector. It's worked in manufacturing. It's worked in a subsidiary of JD Athleisure. It's worked in a human capital business, and it's worked in a D2C pure play e-com business. It generally can get implemented into SMEs a little bit easier than, say, PLCs. But it can work in PLCs, but SMEs, I think it's ideal for. So anybody who's perhaps looking for something where they're in a business or going into a business that doesn't have really any sort of strategic framework, and they want to go through a growth story or a turnaround and an exit, this, I promise you, this really would and will help your business. I can also say that banks love it. In the current business, we recently went through a fairly large refinance, and it sailed through credit. And one of the things and the feedback was the bank got a lot of confidence. HSBC got a lot of confidence that the business had something like this in place, and it knew where it was going and it knew how it was going to do its execution. Private equity love it as well. If they ever come and kick the tires, and you're going through a growth story and they're going to come and kick the tires, if they see you've got something like this, doesn't have to be this, but something like this in place, it will give them a huge amount of confidence as well. So it ticks a lot of boxes for your board or your senior leadership team to help you execute on your journey. It ticks a lot of boxes for private equity and also external stakeholders. So that's a little bit about the background as to how that sort of process has come into my life. In the last business, we spent 2 off-site days over February and March as a senior leadership team coming up with all of this. What I would have to say is you need a fairly open-minded board or an open-minded senior leadership team to put this in place. If you've got either that fairly high ego chairman or high ego CEO, there might be a little bit of a clash if you try and introduce it. But if you've generally got a very collaborative culture and a collaborative senior leadership team in your business, it's a great way of getting everyone around a process that they can execute against. And it really does bring everybody together because you do it together. So it really does sort of bring that team spirit. So yeah, it can work that way. So what I intend to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'll talk you through, there's 2 sheets to it. The first sheet is all about the business. Who are we? What do we aspire to be? What are our values? What are our principles, etc. And then the second sheet is actually the meat of the execution and the stuff that makes you get tactics done. So I'm going to share my screen and you'll see the first sheet of the roadmap, and then I'll talk you through a little bit what each section is. And as Christine said, I'm more than happy to share, or this will be shared at the end. Anybody who wants to know a little bit more about it would have no problem having some follow-up conversations. The crib sheet can be shared with you. So in other businesses, the current business Online for Baby, I pulled the crib sheet together to help the SMT through the process. They'd never had a strategic plan at all for the business. It had just been scaled as 2 sisters, as market traders 20 years ago, and scaled up from that, but they'd never had a strategic process. So I did a bit of a crib sheet for the offsite sessions. I'm more than happy to share that. So let's try and share. Hopefully everybody can see that. Is that working okay? Yeah, good. So top left-hand corner, the clue's in the title, by the way, execution roadmap. This document helps you to execute. And it's important about the cadence of how often you sit down and review it and review your progress. In some businesses, we've sat down as an SMT every fortnight, which means you get traction and you get yourself going, and then you can move it to monthly. But the cadence is important, particularly with the second sheet when we go through that. So in terms of vision, the vision statement really is, it's where the business aspires to go. And really what you want is it's something that shouldn't change for the long term. If the vision of a business is changing every 2 or 3 years, you've really not found your vision. And your colleagues will lose confidence if every 2 or 3 years you're changing the vision. The vision is something that really should be cast in stone for a long, long time for a business. And really the vision is your why, and the mission is the what and the how. So the vision is the why. Why are we? What is this business? Where do we aspire to be? And for the process we went through Online for Baby, I used some examples. So I used IKEA because I think that's a great business. So the vision of IKEA is to create a better everyday life for the many people. That's their vision. You can see it's very top level. It's not too wordy. It's very clear. So it's to create a better everyday life for the many people. When we look at IKEA's mission, hopefully you'll see how the mission speaks to the vision, and the two are very connected, but they're also quite different in what they're looking to achieve. So really your vision is, some people call it your North Star. Okay, you'll hear that quite often. It's our North Star. The other business that I really loved, I learned a bit about a long time ago, was Southwest Airlines, and they were a business, an American airline, that people loved flying on. Some people would spend more money to fly with Southwest Airlines than they would another airline because of the experience. So Southwest Airlines, their vision is to become the world's most loved, most flown, and most profitable airline. So it's fine to have some sort of financial objective, most profitable airline, it's fine, but a lot of visions won't necessarily speak about, we want to be 100 million turnover in 3 years. That's not necessarily a great vision to get all your colleagues, all your business around. So when we look to mission, it's really your core purpose, your focus, your aims, and it explains what you're going to do and your key objectives. So it differs in the vision. As we said, the vision is the why, the mission is the what and the how. So IKEA, if we think about vision for IKEA, is to create a better everyday life for the many people. IKEA's mission explains how we're actually going to do that. So IKEA's mission is offer a wide range of well-designed, functional home furnishing products at prices so low that as many people as possible will be able to afford them. And hopefully when you think about the vision to create a better everyday life for the many people, hopefully you can see how that vision and the mission chime together. So South West Airlines was dedication to the highest quality of customer service delivered with a sense of warmth, friendliness, individual pride and company spirit. And if you get a chance to go on YouTube sometime and have a look at some old South West Airline videos, they're brilliant. Their customer service and the airline staff are absolutely amazing. And what's interesting, South West Airlines nearly had a catastrophic aircraft failure quite a while ago, and they survived as a company when a lot of other airlines wouldn't survive, and they survived as a company because they'd stayed true to their vision and their mission, and they were so loved by their customers. So then you get to core values, and a lot of businesses have values. What I've always found is core values is a great opportunity to co-create them with all your staff. So a lot of what we're going to talk about or are talking about, you can't really co-create with everybody in your organization. But your core values, I believe you can. And you can have individual sessions depending on the size of your business. But if you create and agree your values and everybody has contributed into agreeing those values, they will be lived and breathed in your business because everybody bought into them. They will be far more sticky. You want somewhere between 3 and 5, and they can be everything, but they've got to mean something to the business. And it's sometimes quite good to have a one-liner after the end of each value to explain why is that value important to my business, to our business. But if you can create those values with all your business and everybody contributes to deciding what your values are going to be, you're more likely to have it lived and breathed every day. What's important with values is the say-do gap. So as a senior leadership team, if you undergo this piece of work, you become on show every day. Okay, so you've got to, it's a bold step forward to put something like this in a business because you've got to live and breathe it as a board or an SNT every day. You are on show, and the say-do gap becomes super, super important. It can also be very destructive. The do as I say, not as I do can be also very destructive. So in Online for Baby, the 50 people that work in Online for Baby, we had a session with all of those people and we agreed the values through everybody. Everybody decided what those values were going to be. And then it needs to be lived and breathed every day. Your values very much need to be brought to life by your marketing teams. How is your brand going to bring a lot of this that we're talking about to life? So strategic anchors. What are strategic anchors? They're really your 3 non-negotiable behaviours. They're the most powerful businesses run a lot of their decisions through their strategic anchors. They are non-negotiables. And they mean you stay true to your beliefs. So when you think about your vision and your mission and your values, your anchors are something that are non-negotiable, and you should not try and deviate away from those anchors. They stop you making what are called those bright and shiny decisions, and you sort of suddenly run off in that direction because that's the new shiny penny. They make you keep on track. And they can be whatever. Brand promise. Your brand promise is what your customers expect to experience every time they interact with your business. And you've got to be committed to delivering your brand promise every day, and it needs to be very simple to understand. So BMW is a great example. For a long, long time, their brand promise was the ultimate driving machine. And they changed that a few years ago. And it was a disaster because their customers no longer resonated with what their brand promise was. And interestingly, after about 3 years, BMW changed it back. So yeah, your brand promise is what your customers expect to experience every time they interact with you. Then you've got value proposition. We're all on the left-hand side here still. Your value proposition. So value, in a very simple definition, value is satisfaction minus price. Okay, so if you deliver great satisfaction at a competitive price, you will be delivering exceptional value for your customers. And what you're looking to do is deliver superior or unique value from your customer's point of view. You've got to think about who your customer is, what their pain point is, and why is your business better or distinctly better than your competition. So value is satisfaction minus price. And if you think about those two variables, deliver great satisfaction at a competitive price, or if you charge a very high price, you better deliver great satisfaction, because if you don't, you will not be perceived to be delivering good value for your customers. Okay. Some value propositions. So if you think about Slack, their value proposition is making it downright pleasant to work together. Shopify, anyone, anywhere can start a business. And then HelloFresh. HelloFresh is an interesting one, and I picked this one when we used it in Online for Baby, because their value proposition is stress-free meals. And I speak from experience when I tell you that's not true. And interestingly, HelloFresh have struggled a little bit compared to their competition. So we've used Gusto at home for quite a long time, and we tried HelloFresh for about a month, and it was awful. Meals didn't turn up, or they were late, or they just didn't get delivered. The ingredients were awful. And actually what we experienced as a husband and a wife and parents, etc., was far from stress-free meals. So HelloFresh did not live up to their value proposition. And guess what? After a month, we went back to Gusto, and we've stayed with Gusto ever since. And I just won't consider moving to HelloFresh again. It was a really bad experience. For them to have their value proposition as stress-free meals, in my view, they've got a bit of work to do. Some of the meals were awful. And then you've got big 5-year goal. The Americans sometimes call it the BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, typical American thing. You're going to have to get used to this, Chris, as you embark on your American adventure. But it actually is really good to have a big 5-year goal. And it's that shoot for the moon thing. And it's something that can get all your business engaged around. It's going to be really ambitious. But it's something that's got to grab your colleagues' attention. And you think, do you know what? There's a chance, but there's a huge, we've got all the stars have got a line, and we need a load of luck. But do you know what? How amazing would it be if we could deliver that 5-year goal? So it's got to be really, really ambitious. And then you've got a SWOT analysis on the right-hand side. And I guess loads of you will know about SWOT analysis. What I found really good in the process is, as a senior leadership team, if you all go away and do your own SWOT analysis individually, and then someone coordinates it, and you consolidate everyone's views onto one consolidated SWOT analysis. Because quite a few of you on your board or your SMT or your SLT will probably have similar strengths. You'll come up with similar stuff. So someone coordinates one final SWOT analysis. That tends to be useful. And then what you can use is that SWOT analysis for the second sheet that I'm going to go on to now. So this first sheet, hopefully you can see, it's all about where does the business want to go? What are we? What do we live for? What do we stand for? What are we good at? What are our risks? What can we do better at, etc. So it's all about this business ideology, okay? The second sheet that we're going to click on now is the actual doing. There's a phrase called "there's them that do and there's them that talk about it." So some businesses will do a lot of talking about their strategy, but they won't do a lot of doing. And some businesses will have perhaps a one sheet of A3 or A4 with a few paragraphs, and they will say that's their strategy. But how are they actually executing against that strategy? To me, that's not a strategy, just having 3 or 4 paragraphs on one sheet of paper. So the second sheet is this, okay? And you've got 3-year, 1-year, and quarterly breakdown. So you've got 3-year and 1-year objectives, and then you have strategies that underpin your objectives. So these objectives can be anything. So give you an idea, in Online for Baby, there are 8 3-year objectives. There are 12 1-year objectives, and there are 37 quarterly objectives. The quarterly strategies should underpin delivering your 1-year objectives. And if you find that you deliver the majority of your 1-year objectives, you'll be well on the way to delivering your 3-year objectives. So your objectives could be anything. It could be, we want to be 100 million in 3 years. We want to be 45% gross margin. We want to win X percent of market share against our competition. It could be, we want to be international in these territories. It could be, we need to open stores. It could be one of the ones for Online for Babies in 3 years to be star accredited with best companies to work for. Okay. It can be anything, but they've got to chime with the vision of your business on that front sheet. So the second sheet is what actually gets stuff done that chimes and resonates with the front sheet. So you don't want too many 3-year objectives. You should have more 1-year objectives, and then you should have quite a lot of quarterly objectives. The 1 year and the quarters all have, in the businesses that we've introduced this into, they all have an owner. They all have a name against it. It's the initials. So if I was to show you the execution roadmap for the last 4 businesses I've been in, you will see that all the 1 year and all the quarterly strategies, there is an IC or a TD or a whatever against each one. And it is that person's responsibility to deliver on those objectives and those strategies. Okay. The strategies rotate. So you'll tend to find that you have lots of strategies in your closest quarter and quite a few in your next one. Your 4th quarter, you won't have that many, but as you complete your closest quarter, that drops off and then it rotates. And then the next quarter will build up, and then they build and build, and it's a constant cycle. And as I say, if you identify the right objectives and the right strategies and you execute on those strategies, you will find that you then more likely achieve your 1-year objectives. And if you do that, you'll be well on the way to delivering your 3-year objectives. So it's very important that all of those are given a owner. It's someone's responsibility to deliver. They'll need a team of people with them, under them, by the side of them to deliver on those, but it's their responsibility to get it done, whatever it is. Okay. What I would say as well is that, and just sort of ending off because I'm conscious of time, a strategy is only as good as your ability to articulate it. Okay. If this just stays as a piece of paper, then it's just a piece of paper. I would urge you, anybody who wants to embark on this process or a process like it, do everything you can to articulate it to the business. And I was really proud in Online for Baby that when we embarked on our first Best Companies to Work For survey, we introduced monthly town hall meetings, and we have shared this roadmap. We've been very transparent with everybody in the business at the town hall meetings, what it is, how we're progressing with it. They can see that we have a document that holds us as a board and an SLT to account. Okay. And one of the things we scored most highly on in our first ever Best Companies to Work For survey was the question that the senior leadership team has a plan I believe in. So we went off site and developed this, and we met every fortnight to review it and get an update from everybody how it was progressing. But we also shared it with the whole of the business. And where we correlated most highly on our engagement survey was the senior leadership team have a plan that I believe in. So you have to find a way to articulate your strategy to the whole business, and they will buy into it. And I'm conscious of time, so that's probably a bit longer than 20 minutes. So I think that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ian. Really, really great insight and information. We have got a couple of questions, so I'm just going to introduce Peter, who'd posted a question. Peter, do you want to just embellish on that a little bit?
I'm sorry, I'll need to recheck exactly what I said.
How do you manage conflict in core value setting or subsequent poor execution?
Right, thank you.
How do you value? As I said, co-creating values has actually reduced the conflict. So ultimately, depending on the size of your organization, breaking out the whole of the business into smaller groups, and then coming together with what those groups believe are the values they want to have as a business. I believe when it comes to values, a senior leadership going off site and saying and then telling people these are the values you have to live with, that will cause the conflict. So the way to avoid conflict, if at all possible, is to try and have a session or multiple workshops where you co-create your values with the whole of the business. And that's where it does become a bit easier putting this into an SME if it's 50, 80, 100 people, because it's more easy to do that. But co-create your values with everybody in the business, and then you shouldn't have conflict. There'll always be somebody who won't quite agree, but ultimately you should then have a business that harmonizes around an agreed set of values.
Like that.
Yeah, I think if I just maybe expand on what I was driving at, I was in an organisation that valued agility and forward planning, amongst others. And actually, there was more focus on the agility and no focus on the forward planning outside of finance. So effectively, what was happening was agility became, you need to react to this immediately because of a complete failure to forward plan. So that's the kind of thing there where we went through that process, everyone included both of those values, but there was an unresolved conflict between the perception of agility and forward planning. So yeah, sorry to take up so much time, but that was...
Sometimes, as I said, sometimes having a bit of an explanation after your values, you have your one word value, but then you have a one-liner that explains what does the organisation, why is the organisation chose that value, can also help with harmonising certain values that might, on the face of it, look to be in slight conflict with each other.
Okay, thanks.
And then Tony, we just have questions about strategic anchors.
Thanks.
Do you want to?
If I could just divert from my question for 2 seconds. I've done a lot of strategic planning, and I certainly agree that those companies that have strategic plans do a lot better if they have that roadmap and they stick to it. There's just no question that it's the right thing to do. And just touching on, was it Simon's question? With the core values, I do find that is the thing that falls by the wayside more easily than anything else, because everyone comes up with these values that sound right. You know, people are our greatest assets and this kind of stuff. So it's a kind of nice to have stuff, and it sounds like really good. But company after company that I've been in just don't live it. You know, the people are our greatest assets, and then they actually couldn't care a damn, if I can use that word, about their people, and people talk about a poisonous culture and stuff, and they just don't live them, you know, even if they have them up on the wall. So if you can live your values, I think it creates that company you want to work for. But then going back to my question, I've always used the vision as a bit of a yardstick of what the company should be doing, because quite often the SLT suddenly think of some kind of idea, you know, let's do this, let's do that. And if it doesn't fall in line with your vision, then you shouldn't be doing it. And it's immediately a yardstick. But the one thing that Ian, you mentioned was strategic anchors. Now, that isn't actually something that I've had in my strategic planning before, and I'm quite interested in it, but you kind of glossed over it pretty quickly. So instead of really explaining to me what this new concept was, I'm a bit in the dark. So maybe you could just explain that in a bit more detail, please. I assume it's really a bit more detail about your vision and the relation.
Your strategic anchors really are what I would say are your 3 non-negotiable behaviours. They're almost the behaviours that you run all of your key decisions. If you're going to make some fairly big decisions in your business, what you should do, and And if you're running this process on a regular basis and reviewing it as a board or an SLT, any big key decision making that's going on in your business, you should look to your strategic anchors to say, is this decision congruent to our strategic anchors? Because if you link your anchors to your vision, then those decisions will link to ultimately what you're looking to achieve. The anchors they help you stay true to the beliefs of the organization. So they help you stay true to the vision that you've set. And they do help you achieve your longer term goals. They do help you stop, a board suddenly sees a shiny opportunity over here and runs off in that direction. And it should, or they should, keep you broadly or more on track with the vision or the goals that you've set with the business. They're called anchors for a reason. They're almost bang in the ground. They do not move. They are immovable. And you run all your big key decision making via them to go, does this decision fit with these anchors? Because if you...
But is it a belief or is it more a goal?
No, they're goals, because I'll give you an example. If one of your anchors is, we will not cut corners on quality, because we believe as a business that we have to be seen as a business that offers a very high-end quality product for whatever reason. So your anchor might be, we will never cut corners on quality, and there might be a very good reason for that. If you suddenly find that you're making certain decisions because it might improve margin by 1 or 2% in the short term, but actually it would mean that you have to make some decisions on quality, that is not congruent to your strategic anchor. And if you make your anchors rooted to your vision, it will make sure you stay true to your vision. And the vision is the longer term objective of the business. So again, it stops you making possibly some rash, shorter term decisions that put your longer term journey at risk.
Have you got another example or two that might be useful?
Could be lowest price to market. Could be you're going to be at the forefront of innovation. So particularly depending on your industry that you're in, we will always be seen to be innovative and therefore be at the forefront of innovation. It could be something we talked about online. We will always hire the best people. So if ever we were hiring and we were not sure, there's a great one from the lady who founded Not on the High Street. I would rather have pardon my language, I would rather have a hole than an arsehole. Therefore, wait and recruit until you find the right person for your business. And if you're not 100% on a hire, then don't hire. And that was her fairly blunt way of putting it, that she would rather have a hole in her business for a while rather than hire the wrong type of person. So an anchor could be, we will always hire the best people. But if you refer to that anchor, it should stop you making a 50-50 call. And when it's a 50-50 call, invariably you're hiring the wrong person. So they can be anything.
Brilliant. Anybody else got any questions? Surely there's some, or their own insight to share.
Hi, Ian. Simon Hurst here. When you were talking about the number of objectives, struck me as quite a lot, especially on the quarterly thing. I was just interested in how you deal with change in the business and sort of incorporate that change within the framework, and how regularly you're doing it. I understand the vision and the mission should be, and your anchors are fixed, obviously, but there could be quite a turnover of objectives, I suppose, and just a bit of, your view on how you sort of move through a calendar year, if you like, and as circumstances change, how you adapt.
Yeah. Hi, Simon. So cadence is important, particularly if you've got a business that has not necessarily got a strong culture of execution. Yeah. And this is a document that does help put more of a culture of execution into a business. So generally, we've started fortnightly, and literally sat down and reviewed the second sheet. You don't really need to review your first sheet every fortnight. Yeah. We'd sit and review the second sheet every fortnight, and all the senior leadership team would give an update on their own particular responsibilities. What that did, it put momentum, it put traction, it got delivery going. And then after a while, we moved those fortnightlies to monthly. It does move and it does change. So, for example, in Online for Baby, we've achieved a lot in about 18 months. But one of the things we had as a one-year objective was to open our first bricks and mortar store. And we realised that we'd bitten off more than we could chew because we were going through a whole rebrand. And in 3 weeks' time, Online for Baby will no longer be called Online for Baby. It'll be called something else with a whole rebrand. We were implementing a new ERP system, redoing the website, and. There was a huge amount of launching own brand products. We just realised that we can't do it. We're sucking so much bandwidth out of the senior leadership team, and we had to kick stores into 2025. So it's fine to do that. What we did find, though, that at the end of our first year, at the end of 23, early 24, early this year, we delivered about 80% of our one-year objectives. Not everyone. And the reason we did that is because of those quarterly strategies. Some of the quarterly strategies do move. We didn't deliver all of them in the quarter, and some moved into the next quarter. Whenever.
So I guess sorry, yes, I'm just thinking actually. So in many respects, the fact you've got a regular cadence and review, whether it's 2 weeks or monthly, it does tease out the challenges that that you may not have recognised at an earlier stage, and actually allows you to change course a little bit to still try and achieve as much as you can, obviously, but recognizing when something's definitely not going to happen but in a positive way, as opposed to trying to do it and then failing. And
it's not failure when the whole team has agreed that it's okay. It's okay to move it, and the cadence is important as well, because sometimes people will ask for help. So I'm struggling with this because of X, Y, and Z as well, and I need some help, or I do just need to move this into the next quarter. So cadence is important. I would strongly urge in any strategy, it shouldn't be quarterly. Quarterly is far too long. Minimum should be monthly. But it's okay to move things around, and you won't deliver all of your one-year objectives. But if you get somewhere like 75%, you are well on the way to delivering your year and your long-term vision for sure.
Thank you.
What I did at the last company that I was at is we used to, this used to be in the board pack every month, and we gave them a red, amber, green coding. Green, everything on track. Red, there's we're actually going to miss it. There's some problem. And amber is a problem, but we think we can get over it. But it caused the SLT members who were responsible for the objectives to think about every single one of them that they had their name against, and decide on how they're going against it, and be open and transparent about how they're progressing with the objective. And obviously, if they're all red, there's a lot of pressure on that person and that department to do something different. And indeed, the whole SLT need to be bought into helping resolve the problem.
Yeah, I tend to green, Tony, the quarterly strategies when they're complete. I tend to green them, because there is actually a feel-good factor when, as a SLT, you sat down and you see that, look at all the green that's building up. Wow, we are making progress. So, sort of traffic lighting it, or just showing when it's done, show it green. And when everyone sees there's lots of green on that piece of paper, everyone feels pretty good about their ability to execute.
I think a lot of it as well is about accountability, isn't it? Because so often you can go into a meeting and say, yeah, I'll do this, I'll do that. But if it's not written down somewhere, it's easy just to not do it. Whereas if you're meeting every 2 weeks and actually, I've committed to this, I need to get this done, because in 2 weeks, someone's going to be saying, have you done it? Which is a simple, there's a simple thing, but it just keeps everybody accountable.
Yeah.
Anybody else, any questions or any of their own experiences to share?
Just one little anecdote. The Japanese have 300-year strategies, which sounds insane, but the reason they have that is very often the strategies that you determine today are constrained by today's thinking. But if you look at a 300-year strategy, then nothing that is a constraint today will necessarily be a constraint in the future. So it gives the companies an ability to totally free think without any of today's constraints. And that's why they've historically been so successful. It's because they really are strategizing outside the box.
Wow. Brilliant. Well, if no one else has got any questions or anything to add, I think that's been, oh, sorry, Lisa.
No, no worries. I was just interested as to if you're going to introduce this, any tips on suggesting it? Because so we're a team of 4, so we're not massive in terms of an SLT. Any ideas or tips on how to introduce it? Because we haven't really got a structure like this at the moment, and I'd like to bring something in.
So I always talk about co-creation. So as I say, in most of the businesses, we've gone off-site. We've gone out of the business. So in Online for Baby, as it's still known, we went off-site for one day in early February. We went to a really nice room in a nice hotel, and we worked through the first sheet. So we didn't do both sheets in a day. Don't rush it. The first sheet I tend to find is the harder sheet to do. When you're trying to really understand what is our vision, what do we stand for, that actually takes a lot more thought and collaboration. And that, to some degree, is why I came up with the crib sheet, because the shareholders of the business had never gone through any sort of strategic process at all. So this was very, very new to them. And then other members of the SLT were a bit younger and hadn't been through it either. So I would say don't rush it. Don't force something. You might get to the end of your first day and you haven't completed all your first sheet. The SWOT is a really good place to start, because most people generally can complete a SWOT. They know, if they've been in your business long enough, they'll know strengths, opportunity, weakness, threats. They'll know it. And then what you do is you sit down and you realize you probably are quite harmonized with a lot of your thinking. And that's a good place to start. Using your SWOT analysis can be a good way of identifying stuff for your second sheet, though, because if you use that as a point of reference, it will show you, right, this is where we believe our strengths are. What actions, what strategies or objectives should be put into the business that plays to our strengths? Or actually, there's a big risk here, there's a threat. So what do we need to do? What objective should we have in the next 12 months to try and nullify that threat, if that makes sense? So the SWOT's a good place to start. Do it all independently and get someone to consolidate the outcome. And then I would go off-site. Don't do it at work, particularly if you're a smallish business. I know SMEs are demanding, and it's very difficult to have this sort of free thinking when you're actually in the business. Get everybody to turn the mobile phones off. We're not allowed them on the table. And if you don't get everything done in your first day on the first sheet, come back to it. Take your time. Because really, this is the stuff that should stay cast in stone and is really going to guide your business for the long term.
E. Hempel has asked if we're going to share the roadmap template. I think Christiane will send a follow-up email after the session. And I think, Ian, you're going to share the templates so that we can forward them on. And you said we're also okay to share your contact details, Ian. So if anyone's got anything they want to discuss further, they can contact you.
Absolutely. No problem.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think it's been really interesting. It's really good of you to kind of share all this insight, because obviously this is something you've successfully implemented in 4 businesses and it's been fine-tuned over time. So hopefully people will benefit from being able to implement something similar. So thank you very much, Ian. Really appreciate you taking the time.